Hello, everybody, and welcome to the return of the Evil Geniuses Bleed Blue podcast. My name is, I guess my username is Fusion. I go by Ricky, but most people know me as Fusion. That's what my Twitter is. It's what my YouTube is. But I'm obviously back. It has been a long, long break since my last episode, and I don't even think in that episode, I don't think I ever detailed that it would be my final episode, because it kind of just happened naturally, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. So, obviously, the first thing I'm going to talk about is kind of give a brief, recap on why I'm necessarily coming back to doing this again. And also, just to disclose this, obviously, my podcast, the name of this podcast is the Bleed Blue Evil Geniuses podcast. It's the Bleed Blue podcast. Look, the EG now has a new hashtag that is Bleed Blue. I have no idea. I would like to hope that maybe I had an influence on that. I don't know if I did. Obviously, I'm not implying that I did. I don't have that kind of ego. But I mainly am pointing that out because I just want to mention that I am not affiliated with Evil Geniuses in any way, shape, or form. I'm just a fan of what EG used to stand for, what EG used to represent, and um, I I don't want to say I covered because it sounds like I was a journalist in some sense, and I definitely wasn't. I don't have like sources, and I'm not a journalist in any way. I'm just a fan, and but I did talk about basically everything that happened, or you could talk about when it came to Evil Geniuses for a period of almost a year, just about a year or so. Back in, let's see, it would have been, they won champs in 2023, so 2020, just about coming out of the summer of 2022, um, to yeah, just about a year, I think. I think I covered the team for just about a year. Because it started when the new CS:GO roster came out with Nealon, and it finished just shortly after the Evil Genius when Nicole left Evil Geniuses, and the World Championship Valorant team ended up splitting apart. That was around about the time when I stopped making episodes, and the biggest reason for that had nothing to do with like the organization. I'm not starting this up again because the organization is like, I think they're redeemed entirely or anything like that. It has nothing to do with that necessarily. I mean, I do think they've taken some baby steps, some very small baby steps in the right direction, which I'll get to. I'm also going to talk about the things that I still think they need to do. And there's an article that kind of coincides with that as well. But the biggest reason that I'm back, honestly, is because, look, I stopped doing episodes because um, after the World Championship Valorant team split apart, um, there was obviously a massive offseason in Valorant. The Counter Strike teams were disbanding. Every team that EG had essentially was being removed or let go. Essentially, the org was kind of shutting down in a sense. It was becoming not just a skeleton crew, but it was also just not. There wasn't many public things happening. They were just kind of trying to be very silent and very quiet and have nothing come up, almost in a way to like kind of kill the bad press with silence. Obviously, there's way too much bad press for them to kill with silence. I'll get to that a little bit more later. But and so it wasn't that there wasn't anything for me to cover, which is the reason why I stopped. It was kind of a mixture between, I guess, partially that, but then it was also just, it wasn't like my passion for wanting EG to be what they used to be again. Like that hadn't wavered. It was just more so that I was losing hope. I was just really hoping, and I felt like I was repeating myself, that I was praying that essentially the organization's value would drop so much that a new buyer would come in and swoop in and buy EG out, and that hopefully that buyer would be maybe Alex Garfield himself, or someone who maybe a Sir Scoots or something, or somebody who actually cares, someone who actually understands the brand, and wants the brand to be what they used to be, and is willing to make the right decisions to do that, and empower the right people to make those decisions, unlike what Peak Six did. Um, and that just never really happened. As much as maybe people want to give Chris all the benefit in the world, look, he was selected for this position. Nicole had a say in that, obviously, and Chris technically wasn't in charge with the entire World Championship roster falling apart, and with he was still the de facto CEO during the new merch drops that were terrible, that were basically a way to cash grab off of the success that they had had. Um, you might also be aware of like E.G. Casey. She's like head of marketing. She used to be at the MLB. She was also a part of that, right? So like, look, right now the marketing and everything sounds really great. Sounds like they're on the right direction. But these are the same people to some extent, right? Like these are not different people. The people that got screwed over are obviously still gone, as far as what I mean. Like this is a skeleton crew. Um, and I'm mostly back, honestly, because the Valorant team deserves to be talked about, and I want people to know that there's still, like, if there is a fan out there for Evil Geniuses that wants the org to be what it used to be, that really cares about this organization and follows up on literally everything. I mean, I still follow the Rocket League players that they dropped ages ago. Like, I still keep up with these guys and I care about their careers and whatnot. Um, and so for me, it is very personal for me. And I want this organization to be good again. I want them to take responsibility and whatnot, and I want them to be what they used to be. And that is going to be a very long and arduous and tedious process. And they have made the smallest of baby steps in the right direction. But because of how well the Valorant team has played, because of Potter, really, she's probably the number one reason. She deserves to be in this pantheon of, look, this EG has had a bad history recently, but Potter represents everything that EG used to be, to a T, right? And so yeah, I wanted to talk about this team again, really. This team it's just been very interesting to follow, and I wanted to talk about them. And I also wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the things that have been changing with EG over this period of time, because now things are starting to happen again, and there's material for me to talk about, and frankly, the passion too has kind of come back a little bit more. I was getting very burnt out with the podcast episodes every week, so again, look, it might be somewhat weekly while the Valorant team is playing. Obviously, once their season ends, there won't be anything happening beyond just news with the organization. So I'll still talk about that stuff, but it'll be probably a lot less frequent episodes. But in terms of, at the very least for now, yes, I will be talking about the Valorant team most likely every single week because they play every single week. So I will talk about them. And hopefully the episodes will be shorter. This one's going to be rather lengthy because I have a lot to cover. So stay prepared for that. But hopefully, obviously, like next episode, I'll just be able to focus fully on the games, on the matches, and that'll be kind of a quicker episode, hopefully, because I tend to ramble. If you haven't seen the length of my previous episodes, the average length is easily an hour, or it's about an hour. So, um, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this stuff. I have debated making a second channel specifically for this stuff, and I wanted to move all the original videos over as well. The problem being, I can't just move them over. I have to re-upload them, and I posted so many videos that I just don't know if I can do that. So if you guys really want me to make a second channel, and maybe I'll start posting this part, like from this episode onwards, onto the new channel, and I'll probably also post the Vorborg interviews as a re-upload. But like, if you guys want me to do that, I will put in the work to do that. But for now, it's probably just going to stay on this channel. But if people really want me to move it to a separate channel to keep my personal YouTube channel separate from this, I'm more than welcome to do that, obviously. And I might even make a separate Twitter account, but I don't know if I'd do that. Um, so yeah, so I guess without further ado, that's I guess it for the intro, obviously. Let's really get into what has been going on with this organization over the past couple of months ish, and also like what things have been good, right? What things have they done that have been good, and what things do they still need to work on? What things are going around? What's happening with with Evil Geniuses at the moment as an organization, right? And where they're at. So yeah, so I guess EG's current state would probably be the best way that I can describe this, right? So let's move this over. This is all, again, this is very, I haven't really prepared a script for this. I needed to get this episode out, and I've been very busy with work, so, um, and studying and whatnot. So this is kind of what you're going to get. You're going to get a ramble here this episode, especially because I'm getting back into the swing of things. So let's first start off, right? Um, so I guess how should I start this? I guess I'll say this, right? I mean, I kind of talked about it before. EG, look, obviously I talked about it every single episode for a year, talking about all the things they did wrong, all of the things that are going on, all of the content that you could find to learn about this stuff. Again, go to Richard Lewis's Substack. You will find so many articles about evil geniuses. You can find literally every bad thing that they've done, essentially. At least that's been reported on, probably in those articles. He has documented it very, very well. I will get into it a little bit later, but Last Free Nation, which is the company with Thorin and Monte Cristo, um, they uh, they have been doing a Four Horsemen series called the EG Files, which is breaking down a lot more and getting into the granular details of this organization. And so I will be talking about that later, for a very specific reason. Um, but you know, there has been a lot of problems, and the biggest problems have come from upper management, and that has been predominantly the issue with evil geniuses, and that upper management hasn't necessarily fully changed. Peak Six is still the owner of of evil geniuses. Chris was basically handpicked by Peak Six and Nicole to some extent. She worked with Chris, obviously, and Peak Six took Nicole's side when Nicole left and tried to make her seem like she was this amazing person, when in reality she did nothing but destroy everything that the brand had built up over the past decade or so, or decade plus, really, more like 20 years. And so, I just think that there's a lot of issues with this organization in terms of the management, right? And Peak Six in general. Like, no, I don't think anyone should have forgiven them or anything like that. Like, look, I saw some many posts talking about like EG shouldn't even be in Valorant right now. Like, they shouldn't even be a part of the partnered system. They should be kicked out. Um, and they're right. They should. They won't because look, guys, if the LCS covered up and was basically helping evil geniuses, like push to the side the Danny situation, that's Riot itself. Like, look, I just don't see a world where they're actually kicking evil geniuses out of the partnership league. Not to mention they would have to find a suitable replacement. You could argue G2, but they obviously have quite a history with G2, based on what they did to G2. So that's going to be a tough argument. Then you're looking at like M80, who also, I mean, not to the extent of G2, but M80 certainly tried to really get at Riot Games. I'm not sure they liked that, when they were trying to, talk about buying out certain teams and stuff like that. Um, so I just don't know, but obviously, but EG, I find it very difficult to believe it's a partnership with Riot that worked, or that lasted for a couple of years, and I would just be very surprised if they do it. I don't think it would be the wrong decision, from obviously like all of the horrible things EG has done, with how they treat their players, how they treat their staff, how they treat their employees, how they treat other organizations, how they treat casters, how they, of certain scenes. The list goes on and on and on of all of the mistreatment that EG has done in their past. But to me, if you were going to kick out evil geniuses, you were going to do it a while ago. It's a little late to do it now. Um, and EG has taken a very, at this point, it's like what they used to be in like 20, I don't know, before Peak Six bought them out, right? They were a skeleton crew of people who were just trying to move it along, and they still have Peak Six. It's a little bit different, but it certainly is a much smaller, tight knit group. And I don't necessarily say that in a positive way, in some sense, because yeah, I think some of these people, like, I think they got away with some shit, and they're still there, and that sucks. But I do think that they have made some good steps, some good baby steps. And so to kind of segue into that, um, I'm going to talk about how there was an article by, and I'm going to try to put this on the or on this little display screen real quick, just to, so you can kind of see it. There's really not much that you can really see when I use this screen, but hopefully it's good enough. And you should be able to, it should be coming up any moment now. There we go. So you can see this article here, Alexander Lee, I believe he was the one who wrote the article. Let me double check. Yeah, so he's the one who you know published this, or not published it, but he wrote it. And it's this article on DigiDay, talking about esports team Evil Geniuses rebranding in a bid to untarnish its reputation. And there's obviously been a correction, so I actually hadn't seen this yet. That there had been a correction on the story. And the previous version of the story implied that the majority of Evil Geniuses in current management worked at the organization in 2022. Chris, the only director level or higher staff who was a part of Evil Genius leadership in 2022. EG has responded to the claims made by fans in this story. So, okay, so that's obviously nice information. But yes, and Chris was picked. Like Chris was chosen at the time, right? I mean, since 2022, I mean, they've still had some mistreatment issues in 2023, obviously. So, it's not necessarily that everybody in 2023, 2022 onwards was a saint, right? Even the director level people in 2023 had some mismanagement issues, and Nicole was the spearhead of that, obviously. So I would not go as to this. This is a nice correction, obviously, and it's more accurate now. But don't take this into like a EG is like, you know, the people that work there now are like, they didn't make any poor decisions when they were a part of EG. That's not what I would take out of it, at least. But yeah, so you can see, this article, right? They kind of talk about basically the new rebrand, how EG has changed back to the old logo, which is not something that I expected. You can obviously see that on my camera. I'm pretty clearly I'm wearing the old jersey, right? I'm wearing the old jersey, which is what I was wearing, I think, at the end of when I was doing these podcasts. Um, but I was obviously a big proponent of, like, respect the crest, like the whole, like the old logo. I wanted that back. I didn't really think that would happen, so I'm happy they did it. It's obviously something I'm very happy about, but they did do it. And EG did, or Chris did talk about how, and rightly so, that the logo never should have been changed, and that it's one of those logos that should never have been changed because it's like the Yankees going to a different font. I would say it's a little bit more extreme than going to a different font, considering they tried to modernize the logo and explain why the new logo was like this modernized version that was better than the old logo. It just didn't really make a whole lot of sense. They got memed on for it. But yes, they did make that change. And so, yeah, and basically, what's nice about this article, right, is that you kind of get to see. He basically mentions about how I don't know who these fans are. To be fair, um, I don't know who these people are, and how he found these people necessarily, but he interviewed supposed EG fans, and I believe that they probably are because of the quotes that I'm looking at do seem very much like what fans would say, of the original brand, obviously. So that's interesting. But there's a couple quotes here from some of these fans, right? And so one of these, this person who her name is Caitlin Roslonsky. She said that going back to an old logo, I'm like, you're just trying to make money selling merch, end quote. And then there was another quote that says, from her, that says, unless there's news about coming back to CS, that's all I saw it as, was just a way to sell merch. And that is a completely valid point. That is a completely valid point that Caitlin is mentioning. And I, to some extent, agree, right? Like it is a great way for you to get more money, right? Um, I would like to hope, and and this is what I'm talking about, right? They've done so many things wrong that it doesn't matter how many right things they do. The crucial thing about EG is they have not publicly, like, apologized for all of the things that they did wrong. They usually try to phrase it as like, we had some ups and downs, some things went well, some things did not. We made some poor decisions at times, but they'll never just outright say, "Hey, we mistreated people and we apologize for that." And like, there was no, and obviously I'm just kind of rambling there, like, but there was no professional like statement, truly acknowledging, look, we really messed up. And by the way, this is something that Alex Garfield would have definitely done. He definitely would have he would have taken the ownership of it. He would have made his own post and it would have been very professional, but obviously he would have done a lot of the writing for it and just kind of talked about it. He would have talked about it. He would have addressed it publicly. He just would have. Whether, he's, correct or incorrect, or whether or not you see him better or don't, he definitely would have done something about it. He would have publicly had a statement about it. EG hasn't done that yet. They just kind of skirt around some of the things that they've done wrong, but they'll, again, usually phrases like, we've had our ups and downs. It's been a mixed bag, or something like that. They have not addressed the issues that they've had. And so, obviously, yes, fans are going to look at this kind of stuff and they're going to be like, yeah, you rebranded to the old logo. So fucking what? Like, you're not taking accountability for all of the horrible things that you guys did. You're trying to kill it with silence. Which is just never going to happen. You've done too many things wrong, and uh, you're just doing this to make us pay money for your merch, right? And I think that's a fair stance. And until they do more things, right, to prove to fans that this is a legit thing that they're trying to do, and there are some beginning signs of that. It's whether or not those signs are going to continue that's important, obviously. And there is a long path. This is going to take years to fix. But I think Caitlin's point is spot on here. I think that is a very valid skepticism. Um, and so uh, here's another quote from somebody. I believe this is from somebody else. This looks like this fan's name is Aiva. I might be pronouncing that incorrectly. But they said that I feel like the organization, especially the newer management, has been trying to capture that late 2010s EG vibe that they used to have. But they really have to nurture it. It's not going to be just a year-long thing. It's going to be a couple of years where they have to nurture a new community and gain their trust back. And I think that's pretty much spot on, right? That's exactly what they're going to have to do. It's going to take a lot of freaking time. And I do think they need to address all the things they've done wrong publicly. And I'm not saying they need to like literally list out every specific thing, as much as that would be nice. Obviously, it's not realistic from a business sense, but they need to acknowledge that it wasn't ups and downs. It was, no, we made very bad decisions. We are not proud of the way that we conducted ourselves and how we treated people. And it's taking actions to help those people as much as you can. Maybe the people that you did wrong by, doing something to show that you're sorry, doing something you can, doing something to help those people if you can, right? I just don't think that's from a business sense realistic for them. Just thinking from a cynical corporate standpoint, but from a fan standpoint, yeah, absolutely. People are going to continue to bash this organization for the things that they've done, and no amount of marketing is going to fix that. Right? That's not an overnight fix. This is something that needs to be changed over time. Okay, so that is very crucial here. This other, let's see, esports journalist and industry observer, Mikhail Klimentov, again, sorry if I mispronounce, said, to me, a rebrand is not even a step in the rehabilitative process. It is maybe a statement of intent of, hey, we want to go back to first principles, we want to change. But in and of itself, it doesn't signal that anything has actually changed. And I do agree with that as well. The logo change, yes, it's nice. It doesn't really mean anything. Again, it could simply just be a marketing tool, right? To sell merch, which it inevitably will. But um, but I'm glad that he mentioned "but in it of itself," because I think they have done some other things that have signaled that they're starting to try to do the things that people have criticized them for not doing in the past. So I think those are, again, good baby steps. I have to emphasize baby steps because they're they have done so much wrong that these things are not like, oh my god, this organization has been redeemed. It's not like that. They have a long process to go here. Um, and so to close it off, it looks like this is just kind of like a quote from Chris. Diapollonio. He says, the return of the original EG logo isn't going to change the community's feelings overnight, and we knew that, but it's a first necessary step in a marathon of work we have to do to rebuild trust with our fans, and we hope they'll stay with us for the journey, which is obviously a nice quote. And I'm glad that they recognize that, at least seemingly publicly, from this article. So I thought that was interesting because you got to hear some perspectives from other EG fans, and again, I don't know these people personally. I don't really know any other EG fans personally, other than maybe Current when he was a fan of the CS team. Um, but that was more more so for the players rather than the org, in my opinion at least. And at the same time, it's kind of hard to figure out who EG fans are because I don't feel like there's many of us left, at least who remember what EG used to be. And so I'm grateful that they were, hopefully, I mean, these all seemed like very, I mean, they seemed legit, but they totally could have been, made up for all I know, right? Like I don't know much about this, but I am happy that if these are real fans, if these people really were interviewed like this and whatnot, um, I'm glad that they said what they said. I think they're spot on. I think they're completely accurate. You know what I mean? And yeah, I'm thankful for that. Right? I'm thankful for that. So it was a good article, and I'm glad that article came out. Um, and so yeah, and so there was another, obviously there was an article that came out from EG, um, that well, I said it came out from EG. It was paid for by EG, but it was basically just talking about their rebrand. There were a couple of quotes from Chris talking about the changes and whatnot. And again, it was very much the same. This is the first. This is one of our first steps into trying to rebuild our fan base and restore trust in our brand and whatnot. We never should have changed the logo to begin with. All these kind of things, right? That we were talking about before, right? That's kind of what was talked about in these articles. And so yeah, I think I've rambled along enough talking about all the things they've done wrong. And again, go look at Richard Lewis's articles. He's the most reliable source in esports when it comes to journalism. If you want the top of the top when it comes to journalism and esports, you go to Richard Lewis, plain and simple. Go to his Substack. He has so many articles talking about evil geniuses. You can go to his YouTube channel and find plenty of videos talking about evil geniuses. Um, Go to Thorin's YouTube channel. You can find plenty of videos talking about evil geniuses, and you will understand there is so many things they did wrong. Um, but crucially, one of the biggest reasons why I think that EG really, really, really needs to put out, like, just for like, it doesn't make sense if they're taking this perspective, right, of like we're gonna try to kill it with silence. I'm saying it's not going to work because if fans still remember now, and you know how fickle fans are. I mean, we fans of esports, especially on a casual level, like that don't actually care about esports. They're not watching everything, trying to learn more about how the structure works and whatnot. These fans, they can forget about something in a week. You know what I mean? Most of these people, when they ask like, oh, like what is the new logo? Who's the first person that comes to mind when you see the old EG logo come back? People were saying Nicole. Like their first thought wasn't Alex Garfield, right? Like these are fans that are they're just what happened last week, right? Like what happened last week. So the fact that those fans haven't forgotten all of those things and still see EG in a very poor light, I think just goes to show you just how wrong they were with some of the decisions that they made, and frankly, like I'm putting it politely there. I mean, flat out just mistreatment of human beings. It's fucking disgusting what they did. Um, it really is. But the reason why they need to address this even more so is because, guys, this shit's all going to get aired out again, and it's going to be aired out in some serious detail, and it's going to happen very soon. And I don't know what guest this podcast, to not spoil it yet, is going to bring onto it, but whoever it is, you can best be assured it is going to be a fucking banger of a podcast. It is going to be a long one, and they are going to rip into Evil Geniuses and all of the shit that Nicole did, all of the things that went on, as far as that they can as they can speak on, as much as they can talk about, as much as they know. They're going to talk about this stuff, and that podcast would obviously be this podcast series from the Last Free Nation. If you don't know who Last Free Nation is, again, it is Richard Lewis, it is Thorne, it is Monte Cristo. Mostly Thorne. I think it's actually Thorne and Monte Cristo who own it. I think Richard was a part of the ownership at first, but is not now because he wanted to go his own separate way. So I think it's Thorne and Monte Cristo, and I don't know who else co-owns it. It might just be those two. But the point really is that this series, right? The EG Files Part 1 and Part 2 have already been released. If you have not watched the EG Files Part 1 and the EG Files Part 2, I highly recommend that you watch these podcast episodes. Obviously, I have this. There's this one here with how did EG fail their star player Danny. If you want to learn more about the specific Danny situation, obviously listen to this episode. But this is not part of the EG Files. The EG Files is so far two parts. There will be a third part, most likely coming out very soon because it has been 2 months since the previous part. And I'm sure with the new changes to EG and some of the stuff that's been happening, I'm sure they're going to want to do a third episode very soon. It's been 3 months ago since part 1, 2 months ago since part 2. Part 3, I can only imagine, is going to be coming soon. And so, why do I mention specifically part 3? Why do I think part 3 is going to be important? Or just kind of in regards to why they really just should put this out, because there's no harm. Look, this stuff is going to get aired out anyway. I mean, it already has been. I mean, you could just go look at the articles, right? But a lot of fans, right? A lot of people, and maybe even industry people, maybe they won't read an article these days because they're just, some people are like that, but they will listen to a podcast episode. Podcasts are all the rave right now, right? I'm sure, and this is done very well. I think at least it's done a great job of talking about evil geniuses. And so it's just like, guys, just make it public, man. Just apologize publicly for everything that you've done. And I'm not even saying that to try to be like, to protect the brand. It's like, just like, why are you hiding away from this still? Why are you trying to pretend like it, just like shoving it under the rug? It's like you're shoving it under the rug, but like you're in a glass box and everybody can see you, right? Like they just know that you're shoving it under the rug. Like you're not hiding anything. Like it's like, or I guess another equivalent analogy is like you're trying to hide, like, I don't know, like a massive, like, pile up of I don't want to say like dead bodies, but you know what I mean. Like you're hiding a bunch of dead bodies under a tiny little carpet, and it's like everyone can just see the dead bodies. Like you're not hiding anything. So just apologize and take responsibility for it. And I think most of this, by the way, guys, comes from Peak Six itself. I wonder if Chris actually does want to take responsibility. I don't know any of these things. Obviously, I'm fully speculating, but like it is it does seem like this could be a Peak Six thing, where Peak Six is just like under no circumstances. You know what I mean? Could be. I have no actual knowledge. But why again am I mentioning part 3 of this 3-part series? Well, part 1 was talking about, obviously, the beginnings of Evil Geniuses and Alex Garfield, right? And it's kind of talking about the Alex Garfield era of EG, and how it rose to power and how it collapsed essentially, and fell apart. Part 2 talks about the post-collapse EG, the EG of mostly the 2010s, where where yes, they had plenty of successes, but they were largely a skeleton crew of people who had a lot of experience in the industry and were very good at what they did, but it was a skeleton crew funded essentially by the players of the Dota 2 team and Philip Aram, who worked with the Dota 2 team and then ended up having to be the de facto CEO. And so they kind of talk about that process, and you really learn a lot from this episode about Philip Aram, about how EG was structured, and you can hear the passion in Philip's voice talking about this brand and how much it meant to him, right? And he eventually leaves it off with Peak Six, and after a couple some time with them, decides that he thinks EG is in a good spot. It's in a much better place than where he had it, and so he thinks it is in decent enough hands to where he can leave and do and pursue his own career path that he wants to go into, right? Um, and so part 3 is going to be about Nicole. It's going to be about all of the horrible things that happened, all of the dirty laundry that, yes, has already been talked about and has been reported on. But we're going to find even more information out. There's no way they're not going to release new information, updated information on even more stories and horror stories of what has happened. And who knows what that guest, that could be part of it too, is they might be just trying to wait for a guest that they can have on that can really delve into some of this stuff, right? So that is a very large uh, thing to consider if you're EG. Like, I just don't see how you guys still are refusing to do this, because if that comes out, like once that comes out and you still haven't apologized publicly, like there's no world where this looks good. Like there's no world where, you know, um, where you guys look you know, like you're actually taking accountability for any of this stuff, right? And it's just going to shine a light even more on all the horrible things that you did. And again, I'm not saying this to make it sound like I'm like being an advisor for EG and what they should do, from like a perspective of like, for the sake of the brand, you guys need to do it. No, like for the sake of like being a reasonable human fucking being, like you guys should want to apologize for this stuff. Like you guys did some fucking horrible shit. It's gonna come to light even more very soon. Yeah, like, can you please take accountability for the things that you've done? Like, it's not difficult. Even if some of you guys are new, like even if a lot of you guys are new and you didn't maybe even participate in most of the horrible things, it's the organization that participated in those things, right? And there's certain things that like you can apologize as much as you want publicly. It doesn't mean anything, right? And even still, even if you do publicly apologize, yes, that doesn't fix all of the horrible things that you did, but you can at least take accountability for it. And you know, I would hope that if I don't even know how this stuff works, but if you could privately help Danny in whatever way you could, that would be great. I'm kind of just I'm rambling. I'm getting into a rabbit hole with this, but uh, the fact that they haven't even taken real accountability for this stuff, I think, is a big concern. I think it's why fans don't really want to trust them. And yeah, even if they do apologize publicly and it seems sincere, yes, obviously people are still going to be like, I don't know about that. But at least you can say, and at least that you've taken some amount of accountability for it. It's obviously not enough, but it's nothing will be. But simply acting like it just didn't happen, or trying to just stay quiet about it and be like, we had some ups and downs in our with Evil Geniuses has had some ups and downs. It's like, no, you just haven't had ups and downs. You've had some downs. Downs is like a nice way to put it. Like you guys have mistreated human beings so badly. Like the fact that you can't even acknowledge that is just ridiculous to me. Um, so that's kind of what I wanted to mention with that. Uh, Quite the ramble there, so I apologize. But let's move on to the next topic, right? And the next topic is the marketing. The marketing. So there have been some changes to the marketing. The marketing has been updated. And yeah, um, you know, with the marketing, what am I referring to? Obviously, as I've talked about, they changed the logo. I'm not going to get too far into that because you guys just kind of, you know, heard my general thoughts. It's, obviously I'm very happy they brought back the old logo. It was something that I really wanted them to do. Um, I really wanted it to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen. So I'm glad they did it and that it's a permanent change and not just temporary. It was actually kind of leaked. Funnily enough, it was leaked early, like before they actually did the official change, with Sir Scoots, who received an Evil Genius's journey, or I'm sorry, jersey. I said journey, jersey. He received an Evil Genius's jersey, the ones that they are obviously wearing now at VCT. And he said, thanks for the jersey at Evil Geniuses. I kind of like the new logo. You can see that tweet right here. Right, you can see this tweet, and I had mentioned again. This was in June 19th. Much before, like, this article, for example, with the new logo change came out the day that it happened, June 20th. Right, so there was already, I say much earlier before. I mean, it was like the night. It was like the day before or whatever. But I saw this and I was like, huh, this must be what their pending announcement is about. This must be it, right? Is that they're going back to the old logo. Um, Now, I do think that is a positive sign, right? That is, look, look. Unless they paid Sir Scoots to make this tweet, which I feel like would have to be disclosed in some way, it is a nice touch that they sent Sir Scoots, someone who was affiliated with EG for a long time, sent him a jersey, right? Okay, that's a nice gesture, right? That's a nice gesture. Um, again, this is what I'm talking about when I say they are doing some small things, right, that I can appreciate. And that to me, all of these small things are tend to suggest that they do mean what they're saying. They're not just saying these things to say them. They are being intentional with it. There is a purpose behind it. They actually do want to change. They want the perception to change. They want EG to be what it used to be. That is what all of these things are implying. Again, whether or not that is an actual indication of something that you can expect for the long term, I don't know. And it is a valid concern to have. But I think a lot of these smaller things, right, eventually kind of they're adding up a little by little, these baby steps. It's a good start, right? And so, kind of moving forward along those lines, moving past the jersey, right? They've obviously, we can go to their website here. I'll show this on the stream as well. So, they have changed their website. I usually try to keep up with this not super frequently, but I did obviously around this time because I knew that there's certain things were going to be updated. You can see obviously the old logo is back. I do want to just point out, guys, look, with all the horrible things you guys have done, you should not have your first sentence be that to live evil is to reflect what we demand to see in gaming culture. Uh, Maybe don't use your live evil here. This is not the place to use it. Um, you guys have done some pretty fucked up things. Not the sentence that you want for your first sentence on the webpage. Just gonna point that out. From a marketing standpoint, if it's just not a good look considering the things that you've done in the past. And so, yeah, uh, just wanted to point that out real quick. Honestly, the biggest change for the website, like this stuff is still the same. I think these statistics, I don't even think have been updated. I think these are the exact same statistics that Nicole had on the website from literally 2023, like a year ago. And they're all bullshit. They're whatever stats. Obviously, their sponsorship partner list is incredibly small. Actually, I don't think this has been updated yet for their new sponsor, which I believe is what is it, Allbirds or something like that. The shoe thing. I don't know that that's on here. I'm assuming maybe that would be updated at some point soon because I believe they are a legit sponsor. Hewlett Packard's been there for a while. Global Citizen, I think, is relatively new-ish. And I haven't looked into right like who owns Global Citizen. Is it because obviously like Peak Six is listed here as a sponsor, but Peak Six owns Evil Geniuses, so that's not really that doesn't really count. So yeah, I don't know. But the really the point is here. Some of the changes, I mean, it's a lot more simplistic of a website, obviously, than it used to be. I mean, it was relatively simple to begin with. But the biggest thing that's changed, I would say, if I can find it, is our legacy, right? They used to have just like one page. It was something kind of like this, right? Where it would be on this page and there was a timeline here. You would just kind of click through each one. You could see different events and different championships that they won with a little blurb talking about them. But what they've done is they've created this little Our Legacy timeline. They've got like nice backgrounds that change when you click onto or when you scroll down to the next page, so you can see, or not next page, but the next bullet point, so you can see like a nice little background. You can see a description, right? And so it is nice to see this stuff. This is a nice change. It's still a little bit laggy and sometimes buggy. I found it was quite buggy on my phone in particular, with me having to constantly refresh the page. But it's nice that they have this, and they even have like names of the players and stuff for the most part. And the nice pictures too, right? Like really nice pictures of like, hey, look, you not just do you see, hey, you know, they win this CS event. But look, here's a picture of the players, right? Here's Lurpus, right? Here's nothing. Back when he had, when he was a mere child, um, and so that's nice to see that kind of stuff, right? Even some nice artwork here. Look at these old pictures, man. Oh my goodness. EULCS, geez. RTZ here, obviously. And just kind of going through all of these. These are like really nice. Although I think isn't that Sumail who they obviously just had like a issue with. Anyways, you get the point. Like they're kind of it's nice that this is showing all of this stuff, right? You even get the CS team in 2019. Um, I will point out. Oh, I guess here's the LCS stuff. So never mind. I was gonna say. Um, and they do have Danny mentioned in here, which is nice. But yeah. So obviously, right. This was the original roster too with temperature. Wild. Um, but yeah. So I mean, like, this is a nice page. I really like they did this. They made it its own page. I'm a big fan of that. The more you can do kind of stuff like this, the better, right? So I'm very appreciative of that because the original timeline was it was okay, but it was nothing super special, right? And I will add on top of that, I don't have it on one of my tabs up here on my taskbar to select to go to, but they also have been doing in combination with this, they have been posting like YouTube shorts discussing some of these events that happened way, way deep in the past, which is obviously a nice touch. Um, at the beginning, I kind of felt like they were a lot of just kind of like reading off of a Wikipedia page, but lately they have actually been quite good. I feel like it's been a little bit more in depth. Maybe that's just because the information is becoming more recent with the information that they're using. It might be that, or it might just be they're actually just putting more effort into it. That could be another thing as well. But so I'm very appreciative of those as well. Because that's a nice touch, right? It's one more baby step, right? It's one more baby step, and I think that's kind of what I'm noticing out of EG for these past like month or two, is they're putting some effort into this, which is good. They did, obviously. Here's their store page, which has changed about 1 billion times. They obviously, big news here, guys. They don't have those dog shit T-shirts that are like a plain white T-shirt with basic text that just says like Potter for $25. Like they don't have that anymore, which is obviously a good thing because that shit is a fucking joke. And it was a joke last year when they did it. I called them out for it. Their champions shirt was a fucking joke. Everyone and their mother called them out for that because that was just too obvious to ignore. But they didn't really call them out for like all the dumb plain T-shirt text bullshit that they did. I did do that, and I showed it on stream, and fuck them for doing that. That's an outrageous cash grab for to try to milk money basically. They did do this legacy edition stuff. Look, some of it is good, some of it isn't, right? Um, in fact, I think most of their merch is honestly not very good. Let me just be completely honest with you. The Genius League stuff, I don't know how much sales they get out of this stuff, but I can't imagine you get many sales beyond like the people that are actually a part of this. Um, and maybe their family members, but other than that, I don't know who's buying this stuff. Um, to be completely honest with you, it's not like necessarily like horrible merch or anything. It's just the Genius League. Uh, I don't really know exactly everything about the Genius League. I haven't looked into it a whole lot, but because it doesn't really apply to me. But yeah, I just don't know who's paying for all. Who's buying this merch, right? I don't know. Um, but this stuff is, I guess I'll go through the good things and the bad things here. Obviously, they've gotten rid of a lot of the merch that they used to have. Some of their merch that they used to have was good, some of it was bad. Um, but yeah, a decent portion was bad, and I'm glad they got rid of it. Um, some of this stuff has been. Some of this is okay, right? Like, what do I actually like? Well, I love the jerseys. I think the jerseys are great. I think the jerseys are fantastic, right? Like, I think they look great. They've actually done a really good job with adding the green, which they have to use for Hewlett Packard. They actually they incorporated it into the jersey quite well. I like the little NA on the top, here with like I think that's like a bell and stuff. Like it's supposed to be very Americanized. I mess with that. That's nice. Good design and everything. I think they look really nice. So I'm actually a big fan of these jerseys. It's probably the best jerseys they've released to date in terms of their new under Peak 6. Under Peak 6, I would say this is probably the best jersey they've released. They actually did a good job with the green, which for the most part, I have hated the green in the jerseys. Again, you know, I'm a I'm a classic EG guy. I like the dark blue. I like the old colors, right? But I understand they have to use the green for Hewlett Packard, but I actually think they incorporated it quite well into these jerseys. I really am a big fan of these. So I'm glad that they did that, and it's also most importantly, I should say, is reasonably priced at $65, which I know it sounds pretty crazy, but like, dude, jerseys are so expensive. Like, bro, do you know how much money 100 Thieves fans pay for jerseys? Like, $65 is a good price. That's fair. It's actually a very nice price for a jersey. So yeah, so that's nice. The stuff that's out of price, there's a couple of them. Uh, I would say the biggest one is this fucking windbreaker. Like, dear God, if you're paying $100 for this windbreaker, like, God bless your soul. This must be the best windbreaker you've. It better be the best windbreaker you've ever used in your life. Like, it's not the most outpriced, overpriced item on the store. I'll get to that in a bit. But this is like, I mean, the designing is incredibly basic. I mean, like, I don't really understand why this is supposed to look cool. It just kind of looks like you ran out of ideas a little bit. I don't know. I don't really mess with this design at all. The EG logo is incredibly small on the windbreaker, and I just don't even know what the quality of this stuff is, right? Like, what is the quality of this windbreaker? $100 is a lot of money. It better be some high quality windbreaker shit. So yeah, don't really care for the windbreaker. The only thing I like about the windbreaker is the logo, right? That's pretty much it. As for this bleed blue crew neck, obviously overpriced at $70 for this thing, which just seems insane. I don't like the design at all. I think the front, I don't really get what they were going for with the little devil thing. Like, look, it kind of worked on the jersey when you kind of hide that stuff in the background, but when it's in the foreground and it's supposed to be like the main thing, I just don't think it looks good. It just looks kind of childish, like a child made it. You know what I mean? So I don't really understand it. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, and I don't really get the listen. Obviously, Bleed Blue podcast out here, so I mess with the Bleed Blue, right? But like, uh, I don't really get the what is this? What is this like? Is this supposed to be globe? Like, what exactly is this design? Like, I don't know what this is. Uh, so yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't mess with this. And at $70, it's just very overpriced. So I will say that much. The bucket hat is whatever, right? I mean, I'm not buying a bucket hat. I'm not wearing a bucket hat, but good on you, I guess. And again, some of this other stuff is it's whatever, right? I mean, like, it's all good. I like the front of this shirt, right? I like this. This is clean, right? I mess with that. Also, by the way, I'm glad they're using the pro players as like the models. I think that's perfect. Like, you should definitely use the pro players as the models for these. And the photography is really really good, by the way. So the photography is really good um on these images. But the back, again, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. Like, yeah, gaming, but like, we could have done something better here. I think something that's more akin to, like, the front, right? Like, the front is very simple, right? But it speaks to EG. Does this represent EG in any way beyond just like esports and gaming? Like, not really. I mean, they're cool with designs, right? I'm not saying they're not bad. They're not good designs. They're well drawn, and they're good designs. But I just don't understand why they're on the back of the shirt. That's all I'm saying, right? Could have been like a cool phrase or something that's EG related that's on the back here, right? I don't know. Just spitballing, but I just don't really get why that's there. Um, but again, $40, it's a bit overpriced, but like, dude, they had a T-shirt on here, a year ago that was 25, $30 for a plain white T-shirt. So fucking hell, and 100 Thieves merch, I'm sure, is just as expensive, if not more. So like, fuck it, right? At that point, who cares? Um, yeah, look, I'm not gonna get into the rest of this stuff. Obviously, there's a lot here. I like the mini mouse pad. I hope they come out with a bigger one. I don't know that I'm gonna use it because obviously, or buy one because I have my own mouse pad that I really like. But I like the design of of it looks just like the old ones, and so I mess with that. That's super cool. The biggest thing that's a ripoff, or that I don't know what the fuck it is this OGEG area rug. I don't know if you guys have seen this. This is $240, and you don't even get an image of what it looks like. It's supposedly 3 feet, which is not that big for an area rug. It's a like okay size, but like $240, guys. $240 and a chenille rug, which I guess that's supposed to speak to the quality of it, obviously. But like, there's no image of it. It's just an image of the logo of what I assume is what obviously that's what the area rug is of. But like, dude, I could get the same. Like, you could just put the fucking image of your logo on here, and it doesn't help you, right? So I don't know what this looks like. I have no clue. Uh, if somebody has an image of this rug, please take a picture of it. I don't know how you would uh have this rug, but like, yeah. I look, if you're at EG and you're listening to this for some reason, please put some images of this rug, because if you're charging people $240, this image is not helping you determine if this is even remotely worth $240. Spoiler, I don't think any image you put up here is going to justify $240, but uh yeah, because look, listen, I'll be straight up. Like, if this was much more reasonably priced and I could see images of it, I would debate buying it. Like, I really would, because I fuck with the old logo, and yeah, so I would do it. But like, $240 is just by itself insane. Let alone the fact that there's no image to actually show you what it looks like. This is a fucking ripoff. This is ridiculous, right? Like, what are we doing here? So look, some positives there, some negatives. I'm being nitpicky, sure. I mean, I don't think I'm being too nitpicky about this fucking area rug. It's the most overpriced bullshit I've ever seen beyond the t-shirt thing that happened. I'm being nitpicky with the bleed blue crew neck and the windbreaker and stuff. I don't think I'm being nitpicky on the prices, but I am being nitpicky on the design of them, obviously. Um, but yeah, overall, it's a good thing. The fact that they're doing this is a good thing. Um, but at the same time, I can't help but feel like, there's some things that could have been better, right? I think that's it for the marketing. As far as I can think of, I can't think of anything else marketing wise. I think that's pretty much it. Um, so let's move on to Valorant, right? Let's move on to Valorant. And I know we're like fucking, how far are we into this freaking thing? Almost an hour, and I'm now starting to talk about the Valorant team. Jesus. Okay, Valorant. Oh gosh, we have quite a few things to discuss here as well. Look, quick recap for those who aren't aware of Stage. Look, I'm gonna act as though you guys are very much aware of how Stage One went, who this roster is, why they were picked up, all of the drama surrounding the end of last year and the World Championship roster, and why they split up, and all of that nonsense. Right? I did talk about it at the time when I was still doing episodes. I'm not going to reiterate it. I think everybody knows. Okay, so I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to get into, right, is they have done this thing for the past couple of years or seasons now. I think they did it last year, and that's how they got Demon 1. It might have been the first year that they did it, honestly, but they did these tryouts, these EG tryouts last year, and they didn't handle it the right way in terms of how they marketed it, in terms of how they explained it. They basically just made it sound like they're just having people do aim labs and some other stuff, and you know they picked up a couple of players. Demon One happened to be one of them, and then he ended up joining the team, ended up being on the main roster. The rest is history, right? And then they tried to spin it like Demon One was like some talent that came out of nowhere that they themselves had found through this program, when in reality Demon 1 was destroying tier 2 and then just did the tryout, and obviously he was going to be, you don't just, you're not some random player that nobody's ever heard of before when you do you know when you win a tryout like this. You're obviously known to some extent, and Demon 1 was very well known in the tier 2 scene. So for just how good he was, right? So like I think for playing for DSG as well. So just it was disingenuous. It was disingenuous, and they tried to take too much credit for it. And I think that's why people kind of were like, don't know about that, EG. But they did do something different this time, and I really like it. If you guys haven't seen this video, there is a video on their Valorant channel, which is essentially the only channel that matters in terms of YouTube for evil geniuses at this point. And I will also say they always create great content on the Valorant channel. Their Valorant channel has always produced the best EG content in this iteration of EG. The CS team never really got to do content, even though there was promised content with Thunderpick. It never really happened. There was supposed to be a podcast, didn't happen. There was supposed to be a lot of promises for CS content that never happened. The Dota 2 team, I will say, had a very nice kind of like docu series throughout their season, which was really really cool until obviously they dropped their roster. But they did do that, and that was a very good docu series, probably the best docu series that EG had produced, including the LCS one that they did. But their Valorant team has always had the best content, I assume, because they're all basically in the same area, right? So it's easier for you to do the content. But what I want to point out really is this video. We hosted another Valorant scouting combine with the HPE Futures Combine, which I'm assuming is the name for what they're calling it now. I don't know if they called it that in the past a year ago, but that's what they're calling it right now. Um, and I would just point out they have been very much this whole time with HPE. They have been very much on this like it's very data driven, right? HPE is a data driven company. Soham, aka Valens, is a very data driven person, right? I'm not going to get into his background. I assume you guys know. Um, but they've always been very much like that. They would do podcasts talking about data and how they use it in different aspects of the company. I would listen to those podcasts, not every single one of them, but I listened to multiple of them, probably more than most fans, I would say, because I don't know that any fan would want to listen to that necessarily, but I did listen to quite a few of them. And they were interesting. My biggest concern was always, obviously, are you more concerned about the numbers than you are just your eye test, right? Because there is, yes, the data matters. Yes, the data is important, but the data needs to, if you aren't able to assess the data using, as a, with, the data basically should be a supplement to your own ability to judge good and bad from a player standpoint in esports and stuff like that. Like it should be it's a valuable tool, but it is not the only thing that you can rely on. If you solely rely on the stats, but you don't fully understand them, you don't know how to interpret them, you don't understand their blind spots, you're you're giving too much credit to them, and you're not going to be able to use it effectively. And so, again, stats and stuff like this was talked about frequently with EG over the past couple of years. And, there were some results maybe with the Valorant team because they also had a secondary team that helped them, that worked with them, right? But with the CS team, for example, it just never really worked out. That team just never really panned out. And there's a multitude of potential reasons for that I'm not going to get into this. My whole point with this being, I am glad that they did this YouTube video because yes, they get into some of the stats and they get into some of the things that frankly it looks like look, they're the only brand that I see making content like this, talking about the analytics that they're using to assess players, right? This is not something that I look, they're claiming that this is stuff that they pretty much only do themselves. Again, watch this video if you haven't. But it you know I tend to believe him in that I haven't really seen any other videos kind of getting into this information, and I find it intriguing. But most importantly, what I like about this video is that throughout this video they're showing the players that participated in this combine, and they're giving them a platform to speak, and obviously they're going to talk good about EG because it's an EG video. But genuinely, I think this is really, really cool, and this is not something that other orgs are doing in the space. And I'm very thankful that, again, one of the criticisms with EG in the past is they would get sponsors, but they wouldn't really provide them value. They wouldn't do content like this that would really provide the sponsor with value. Again, the Thunder Pick stuff, the amount of things promised that never happened, right? And I suspect that probably happened with a lot of their sponsorships. It's probably a big reason why Monster ended up eventually just leaving. Also the bad press, but it's why EG's had so many sponsors come in and out of the door over the past couple of years. Is a big part of it is yes, they're bad press. Part of that bad press is they don't provide value for their sponsors. And Chris, being someone who came from a marketing background, it's clear to me that he has tried to put an emphasis on providing value for these sponsors. The Allbirds, I believe, is the name of the company. Those videos, I've been seeing those constantly. They are trying to provide value for that. Those videos are obviously scripted, but to some extent. But overall, it's still more value than I feel like I've seen them have in for other sponsorships over the past couple of years. But this HPE Futures Combine one is an incredible. It's a really good video, and Valens is sitting here and he's talking about the philosophy behind this and how they use their data, and Potter's talking about it as well and how they use it, and they've got the players and they've got video of them playing and stuff, and just them talking about their own journeys and how you know and Potter and Valens are talking about what they're looking for in these players, Potter in particular, right? And they're showing Foe's talking about this stuff as well. This is great stuff, man. And they're giving a platform for some of these other players to really have a voice and have a look, have a little bit of a limelight and talk about, right, like what it's like being in this combine and just learning more about them, right? I think that's important because a lot of the tier two space right now, guys, is fucking dreadful. So the fact that they did this, I think this is a fantastic video. I'm very, very happy they did this. It is a great listen, great watch. Please go watch this video. It is very, very good and insightful. And I'm glad that it feels like to me that they've really done or taken a good step in developing this idea of having a combine and turning it into something that is very unique that no other org is really doing, and it's also providing strong value because it kind of felt like when they first did this that this was just kind of like, yeah, they were running some tests on players and stuff, and there was a combine, but it was very like, it seemed like a very like, we don't know how to assess talent ourselves, so we're just going to have a bunch of people do this, try out for us basically. It seemed like a cheap knockoff. So this is nice that you get to see that this is like a legit thing that they're trying to improve upon and establish. And I do think it is something that is actually providing value for the tier two scene, right? Um, Even if it's not a huge value, it has to be something worth of note, right? It has to have some amount of value to it, and it's not something that other orgs are doing. So I think credit to EG for this, like full credit, full marks for this. This is a great piece of content, and this is not just a piece of content, but it provides value to these players, giving them a platform to speak, giving them a platform to learn more about them, right? As fans, right? It's fantastic. So I'm happy with this, and I'll maybe have to look into a little bit more if other orgs have done this, but I don't think so. I think this is pretty much only an EG thing. So credit to EG for this, big time. Um, Moving on to the next part. So this is where we're finally going to start talking about the actual team, and what has been going on with them. So obviously, guys, we are currently in stage 2 of Americas, and I'm not gonna lie, guys. I tweeted about it. This format, I didn't realize this because I keep up with Valorant, but I haven't been like super locked in. I'm really locked in now, obviously, because I'm doing content for it, and I was always keeping up with EG and listening with listening to like the Plat Chat podcast and stuff. And I love Sideshow's content. He's very insightful and all that stuff. So Sean Gare, Sliggy, all of them, right? Like I love those guys. I love their content. So I do consume it regularly, but I wasn't really aware of this until last week, of just how fucking awful this format is. And I'm not going to get into like the whole like structure of the scene. It's just more so just this format for this part of the year. Like essentially, guys, these teams, their records, like this VLR page that shows like the different Omega and Alpha groups, mean nothing. Because they're taking their records from the first stage, and that also is taken into account into whether or not they can make it to playoffs. Um, That's mental. Like so many teams have made roster moves that doesn't make any sense. Um, some teams, right? Maybe they perform too poorly in stage one to where stage two, they don't really have much of a chance. Or maybe there's teams on the opposite side of the spectrum that performed really well in stage one that are no longer even remotely the best team or some of the best one of the best teams in the region that are just their record is so inflated from stage one that they can't really do any wrong and still will make playoffs. So it's fucked up. It's a horrible format. It's dog shit. Not to mention that because you're splitting them up into different groups, that means that like technically a team can play other teams and with these roster changes, who knows who's good and who's bad? You could end up playing a bunch of really easy opponents or really bad opponents and not have to worry about opponents in the other group that maybe otherwise you would have struggled against. And so, again, that can affect your ranking in the overall group or the overall stage and impact playoffs seeding and playoff spots. So this format is just terrible. It's horrible in every way. Um, look, I'm not gonna get into the whole like who makes it to champions. Obviously, it's the top four teams in playoffs make it to champions. I'm pretty sure. But look, the real point about this is obviously not just dog shit format that's costing EG in a sense because well, I guess listen, they're on their way up, right? But like EG in this split, right? I think they're currently 3-3. I don't have the full page or the whole standings pulled up because on VLR it shows both groups and it's only showing stage 2 stuff. It doesn't show stage 1 stuff. But I believe EG is currently because you need to be top 6 to make playoffs, and they're I think 7th out of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 teams, if I'm correct in that assessment. So they are one place out of it. 100 Thieves losing to Furia is a huge boost for EG, especially with EG beating Loud. EG's going to be playing Furia in their next match, and that is in 3 days. That is going to be, as of the time of recording, that is going to be an incredibly important game. All the games are incredibly important, but it does suck because there's a very good chance like EG could play like 6 fucking games or five to 6 games and just there's your season. It's over, right? Like wait till next year. It's insane. Valorant is so stupid with their formats and structure. It's insane. But let's talk about EG versus Loud, because that is the game that happened last week, or yeah, last week I should, I guess, and it was a hell of a game. It was fantastic to watch. My voice is getting so dry; it is getting so difficult to speak. I've been recording for an hour and 12 minutes, so I apologize in advance. Also, now my webpage has decided it doesn't want to load, so I can't even pull up the stats. There's a thunderstorm outside, so I think that's probably causing it, which really sucks. I may just have to talk about this off of memory. Oh, wait, it's coming up now. Okay, we were able to pull it up. So, I did watch obviously this whole series, start to finish, while I was like almost burning my freaking house down because I was trying to cook some chicken. It was a nightmare. Besides the point. Um, yeah, I mean, look, first and foremost, the thing that I have to talk about this series, number one, I guess, nice to see the old logo again on like the nice build, on the VCT stage. It was actually super cool to see the old logo. Didn't really get talked about too much, but I do mess, obviously that's just like it's super cool to see that, right? Just as a fan. But obviously, the number one story of this series is, oh my God, Jogamo is fucking amazing. Guys, he was hitting peak form at the end of stage one. It is carried over so far, obviously, into stage two. It's only been one series, but dude, this guy was frying everybody. He was literally, I mean, he played Neon. Like, this guy was on another level. He was so dominant during this series. It was insane. Like, the guy was a plus 18 for the series. He had 21 first kills and three, right? Yeah, he had 21 first kills and three first deaths. Three first deaths. I mean, that is outrageous. That is insane. This guy, man, is so good. And yeah, like he used to play. People who don't know, before the Demon One thing, and while they were trying to qualify, actually, I believe it was for in 2022, they were trying to qualify, I believe, for like stage two of, or maybe it was during stage one. I don't remember if it was stage one or stage two of the VCT format in 2022. Jogamo actually had played Jet at times. That was a thing. He did. There was a time where he experimented with it. Obviously, he didn't play Jet at all during the series. I'm not trying to talk about that, but it's just my point being, Bustio had primary duelist roles for a while. Jogamo then kind of took it over. Demon One then took it over, right? But people forget just how talented Jogamo really is. I mean, he legitimately was for a considerable amount of time, like EG's primary star. And years ago, especially in like 2022, it was just like, yeah, Joggen was like incredibly talented, but he may just not quite be good enough, right? He's developing. He's a young talent. He's incredibly good. His highs are really high, but does he have that consistency? Is he really that? Can he be the guy on a team? And there were some question marks about that. But over the past couple of years, especially after winning champs, like, dude, this guy, he's just got all the confidence in the world, man. And yeah, he struggled at the beginning of stage one, but like, he's really showing his mettle now. And this guy is just a world class player. He just is. Like, he is just like, especially in this meta, like, he is gonna fry people, man. It's really fun to watch. It's been crazy to watch him develop over these past multiple years. Just seeing him develop as a younger, when he was younger to now is just insane. I mean, I literally watched him essentially grow up in Valorant in a way, and it's been so fun to watch and follow his career. Um, and just seeing like I just can't even help but like remember like the like he could have been like the finals MVP of champions last year. I mean, he was that good. Like that Lotus game that he had was nuts on the Rays, man. Yeah, I don't know, man. Jogamo is just incredible. He's an incredible player, and it's really his movement is on full flare effect right now. You can just tell with the neon, man. He just looks leagues above anybody else on this agent. Probably the best neon in the world. I'm just gonna say it. I know Woot obviously is still a candidate for that when he when he plays, but like, dude, Jogamo's just so good on the movement character like this. It's insane. Like, it is so insane watching Jogamo play on Neon. It's an otherworldly experience. It really is. Um, Incredible stuff. I mean, the dude had 177 ADR. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Um, so I had to get that out of the way. I had to glaze my boy Jaw because the guy just fried people. Um, and I will say, well, I'll get to that in a second. Second thing I want to say is Potter deserves so much credit for everything that has happened with EG. It is so insane that that at one point last year they were actually going to fire her. Insane to think about now because she's just the best coach in Valorant, like, and just has been like for a while now. So so wild, and like, I am so thankful that she is with this team and that she has not decided to just be like, I think technically I think her contract probably ends like this year or something. I hope she stays. um I wouldn't blame her if she left. EG is, I've talked about it already, but um but she's so fucking she's so amazing. Like, she is an incredible coach, incredible human being. um And I think, like, with this whole like combine thing, if this is like a legit thing they want to do and use to like potentially get new players, because by the way, guys, like, yeah, EG, like, look, you can talk about how like they definitely should not be in the league anymore. They shouldn't be in the partnership system anymore. Because EG is trying to remain so cost efficient, this is the kind of partnered team that is going to try to min max like a mouse in CS, and is going to try to get talent that is really talented and develop them and transform a group of players into a championship caliber team. They did it last year. I don't want to say they're transforming this team into a championship caliber team yet, but they are certainly transforming this team into a very high quality team, which is not something that anyone expected, especially when you look at these names on paper. Um, this is if this is what EG is going to be like, then yes, this combine is going to be important. It should be important to them determining what players they would like to sign and what players they don't. And Potter is the perfect and frankly probably the best and only coach that could really do this. So I hope Potter stays with EG for that for that alone. Um, and she represents the brand so well, so well. And so I have so much gratitude and respect for her. um, Obviously, I knew who she was from Counter Strike. I started playing CS in 2015, so I was very aware of who Potter was. I loved when she was on Flashpoint with Thorin and all the skits they would do. Like, I've been a huge fan of hers for a long, long time, and it's so cool to see this story arc of her career. I mean, she's got to be not just because she's a woman, guys. Like, just in terms of just esports figures in general, she has just got to be one of the most incredible people in esports history. Like, she is that good at everything she does. It's wonderful. So yeah, so let's break this down a little bit. Let's kind of get into the series, talk about it a little bit, right? Let's just kind of start off with map one with Lotus. Like, what did I like? What did I not like? Obviously, they lost this map. This was a map that was 6-6 at the half, which frankly, let's be real, it was 6-6 at the half because Jogamo won every single ultimate that he used. For the most part, there was some good calling, I guess, but I didn't really. I don't know. It felt like Loud was still in control. It didn't really ever feel like EG was like fully in this game. Um, it just felt like dude, it was suffocating on the attack side, especially at the start. Just felt like every time anything good would happen for EG, Loud would make a fast rotation or a good response where it would just be like, oh, we got 2 picks at B, yeah, but they just opened the door from C and nobody was ready for it and they just got sprayed down, or like just stuff like that would happen. And it was frustrating. For example, Sadak, the Sadak 1v1 with Apoth for the entire first half decidedly went in Sadak's favor. Apoth, this whole series really just really struggled to find value. And I say that value instead of just like kills because Apoth isn't one of the guys on your team that you're expecting to drop massive numbers in a game. But Apoth is the kind of guy where when he is getting a decent amount of kills, not even like not like I'm not even saying like top frag, like when he's just getting you the right kills, the important kills, if he whatever kills he does find are going to be impactful kills because he's usually playing on the extremities. So and the style of play that he has, like if he can convert those kills even a little bit, he's going to provide a lot of value in a round. But at the same time, if he dies a lot, it's really hurting your chances, right? So it kind of goes both ways. But I just overall it felt like Apoth really struggled in this series to find impact. And it's part of it is just he's a young player. And part of it is just sometimes it can be it's obviously a difficult job. He's playing a really difficult role, but and sometimes he does really really well with it, and he does a lot of incredible things, and he's not afraid to take timings and take fights, which I like. Um, but obviously you have games like this where things don't really work out. He just can't seem to get a timing, or he can't seem to make the right decision sometimes, and some of that is just straight up just bad luck. Um, and some of it is just him being a young player, and playing against a very experienced Loud team, and obviously this team, I say very experienced. They're a new roster, but all these players have been at the top level of play, right? So yeah, that's going to be part of it, right? So he really struggled to find his impact in not just this game, but this series. Um, and yeah, like look, when Nature, Derek, and Apoth are all sub 10 kills and they're at 6, 7, and 8 kills respectively. Like Nature at 6 kills, Derek at 7, Apoth at 8, and Apoth was the most negative player for the map. Like that isn't going to be good enough to win. and Superman was on fire this map. It did not matter. Jogamo was providing, I thought, a lot of value on the ISO, but it didn't matter. So you could argue after seeing his Neon that you would rather see Neon at this point, which I frankly on this map I kind of agree. I do think that like he did though provide a lot of value on the ISO. I do think it provided a lot of value. I think it was very strong. I just think that unfortunately his teammates didn't really play well enough for them to win. And on the defensive side, I think you saw some of those individual weaknesses really impact the game because unlike on attack side where you can just send Jogamo and Superman anywhere you want to go, on the defense side, there's going to be locations where you have guys that are really struggling to find kills, and it's going to be difficult to win. Um, and so I felt like Loud pretty much had control of the entire map. Even when it went 6-6 on the first half, it was like, yeah, we pulled it back into a 6-6, but so, maybe there's some hope here, but like, still feels like Loud should be up by more than this. And so, yeah, that was kind of my takeaways from the first map. Obviously, I actually don't think the ISO was that bad. A lot of people criticized it post match, but I actually don't think the ISO was all that bad. I thought he provided a lot of value. He won them so many rounds with it. Um, in particular the ultimate ability, and I thought Superman played really well as well. But yeah, unfortunately, just not enough firepower, which is the biggest concern that I have with this team moving forward. Is really just is there enough firepower on this roster to make it to a champions? And if you make it to a champions, do you have enough firepower on this roster to make a deep run at champions? That is the stuff that I really question because when you have games like this, you don't really have a whole lot of faith. And Superman, by the way, is streaky in his own right. So we move, and case in point, Sunset. Superman was the one of the worst performing players on the map. He had some good moments, but obviously, and his aim is incredible. Like Supa is an incredible player, but the consistency isn't always there, right? Jogamo was again, the story of Sunset, the dude on the Neon outclassed Sadhawk so badly. And again, I don't even think Sadhawk played that bad in terms of like how he played the Neon. I thought it was like that on Lotus and Sunset. I thought he played pretty good, honestly. It seemed like he understands what he's supposed to do with the agent, how the agent benefits the team and whatnot. But unfortunately for Sadhack, he's playing Jogamo, and Jogamo is a fucking just natural duelist player who just has an intuition for the agent that no other player has. So, as good as you're going to try to do on your version of Neon, you're never going to be as good as Jogamo. I mean, some of the clips that he was hitting that I'm sure you guys have seen were just outrageous. I mean, he is just smurfing. It looks like he's playing against a bunch of fucking silvers, and he's not. He's playing or iron players, I should say. And he's not. He's playing professional players, and he is just dicking all over them and making them look so stupid. It's ridiculous. So Jaw was incredible. 8-1 again on first kill, first death. For the map. He was the biggest reason why they won that map. Obviously, it was 6-6 at the first half, and then EG dominated the rest of the game. Kind of the opposite of Lotus. Um, but overall, and a big part of after Lotus, what Potter talked about was just they weren't winning pistols and they weren't winning bonuses, right? I think they lost both pistols and both bonuses. Yeah, they lost both pistols and both bonus rounds on Lotus, and that was part of what she talked about. Um, and they needed to fix it. And on Sunset, they did the complete opposite. They won pistols and they won bonuses, or at least I think they did lose round 4 of the first half, but I don't know if that was the bonus or if the bonus was earlier than that. I think the bonus is round 3, right? So I don't know. I'd have to look back at that. But at the very least, they won both pistols and one bonus. Um, so yeah, I just think like map 2 was really good. I thought in terms of how they played the map, like I just think they played off of Jogamo really well, and they were very aware of. They did a good job being aware of what was going on the map and what Loud was trying to do. But I think a lot of it I apologize. It is 11:22 p.m. But I think a lot of it just comes down to, you know, just playing off of Jogamo really well, man. Just let this guy cook on the Neon and play off of him, and you'll find success. And some of the setups they ran were very nice, and but they also got lucky. They got really lucky on some retakes that you know Loud essentially just didn't plant properly, um, and it costed them multiple rounds. So that's part of it as well. Um, I do think Loud made some mistakes, and they certainly could have had more than 6 rounds. But at the same time, right? Like EG was playing so well this map that I don't even think it really would have mattered. It was pretty convincing for EG, and obviously the biggest factor of that was just straight up Jogamo being Jogamo. Um, and yeah, so that's good to see. And the other players, by the way, stepped up a little bit. Like Nature's utility, I thought was quite good. Apoth played much better in the second map. Derek showed up for sure. Supa had a little bit of a quiet map, had some important kills, but still had a relatively quiet map for his skill level. But he didn't really need to show it because EG was just so dominant. Um, Icebox was the final map of the series. This map was, I think, there's two angles you can take with it. You can either say that EG should have won this by a lot more, which is kind of the side that I want to take here, but I can't help but remember that round where where Nature just got that ninja diffuse essentially, even though it was blatantly obvious what was happening, and for some reason, like I think it was Pancata was just shooting way too high, couldn't spam the right angle on the smoke, and then the Molotov came in from less, but it was way too late, and Nature was able to get the defuse before he died. I can't help but think that maybe that round, if that goes Loud's way, maybe things change. It's really tough to say, but I do think EG choked quite a few. I apologize. Oh man. But they choked quite a few rounds. I would say like 2 or 3 rounds in that attack half that it really it really felt like they should have won. The biggest round in particular that I can think of was the Superman round where he pushed into spawn into Loud's defense spawn, and all he needs to do is just sit there and wait, and just essentially just wait for players to show up. They're not going to check the angle, and he should get at least one, most likely two, cause a bunch of chaos, and buy some more time for the bomb to, or the spike to continue to tick down. And instead, he tries to go aggressive to force the issue right on one of the rotating players. If he gets that kill, by the way, he can just stay alive and just create absolute havoc on the retake. They're going to be so scared of him and where he's going to potentially be. And the more the time passes and the more they don't find him, the bigger the threat becomes. So I think that was kind of his thinking in doing that, in trying to take the fight. Um, Obviously, he would have been heavily favored because the guy wouldn't have known that he's just been sitting there the whole time. But when he goes to fight the guy, he pulls out his mini map or his utility map, and it costs him, and he ends up dying. And that was a pretty bad round loss. That did result in a couple of Loud rounds that really made you a little worried. But overall, man, EG, that round they lost, round 23, um, that put Loud at 11. Um, it's a shame that they lost that round because they actually they had the right read. They knew Loud was playing heavy mid. They had the right read and everything. They had set up for them to be, hey, they're gonna be really aggressive here. Like we've got multiple players here to watch middle and to fight middle and to just basically take them down. And it didn't end up working out, and ended up costing them, and they ended up losing that round. But overall, I would say it was a very solid map. It was pretty clean. 13-11 I think is actually again generous for Loud. I actually think EG looked a lot better than 13-11 on that map. I feel like it very easily could have gone a much more dominant way for the side of EG. In particular, um, because at one point it was 9-5. And that was the round where the Superman thing happened, and I just can't help but think if he gets one or two kills, stays alive, I mean, the round is basically done. EG wins that. Now you're looking at a 10-5. You know, it's done. So I think 13-11 was about as nice as Loud could have made it in terms of the comeback, because I think inevitably this was going to be an EG game. And Derek really showed up on this map. Jogamo, obviously, I still think the ISO provided value. Maybe I like it more on the Icebox than the Lotus. I think mostly because the Lotus you can still play Neon quite effectively, whereas Icebox, Neon's value isn't the same. So I do think that maybe it's something where, hey, Neon is going to be the primary pick for draw, but if it's a map where like Neon really isn't, just based on the abilities and how the map is laid out and stuff, like Neon just really isn't a viable option on the map, yeah, then we're gonna switch it over to ISO. I think that's definitely an option. So, because I think he provided some very good value with his ISO once again. Nature performed quite a bit better. He did get a super impactful kill at the end of the game on the last round that helped seal it for them. Superman, I thought played much better, although he does seem to have like, look, he has like for every like amazing round Superman gets, he also gets a round where it's like, dude, what was he doing? Like he overcooked or he wasn't thinking. And so yeah, that certainly happens. But I think his peaks, his highs can be really, really high. So yeah, and then Apoth, look, his utility was okay. Um, Obviously from the fragging department, not too great. Uh, I apologize for yawning. I'm so much. I'm really sorry. I really need to finish this episode and go to sleep, but I wanted to talk about that obviously. Yeah, real quick, just kind of touching on the next game. So the next game is against Furia. Obviously, Furia beat 100 Thieves recently in a shocking upset, 2-0. So EG here looking to put Furia back down where they belong. I guess I don't know. Furia looked actually like being legit. Furia actually looked pretty good. I think this, while it looked like it was going to be a cakewalk on the schedule, with them beating 100 Thieves, I think EG's got to take this like they were going to take it super seriously anyway. But I do have a little bit more fear in my heart for this series than maybe I would have. You know, a little bit ago. But after seeing what happened to 100 Thieves, yeah, that does make me concerned. 100 Thieves, I think, is still a relatively good team, um, even if they're not at their peak form like they were. And yeah, obviously, it's going to make me a little anxious seeing Furia beat them. So, hopefully it doesn't happen to us. Hopefully, EG continues to play well. Again, my biggest concern with EG really is firepower. I question the firepower on this team. I think Joggum was obviously got good enough firepower, and Superman shows some good signs of it. Derek and him kind of tend to take turns a bit, which is a bit concerning when that's your second and third options. Whereas I think it would be better if Superman and Derek were more like your third and fourth options. But okay, sure. But then Nature and Apoth really sometimes seem to struggle on the fragging department quite a bit. So those are the kind of things that you want to see change. But yeah, I mean, I think EG is a better team. I don't know that I would go as far as to say their individuals are far better. I think Jogamo is easily the best player on the server, though. I do know that. Um, and I guess I would just say that I think just EG is just such a better team, and now they have at least some footage to watch of Furia. The more time passes, the more EG plays teams, the better they get because Potter is so good at figuring out not just anti-stratting. That just sounds so basic. Like you watched a couple of demos and like, oh, they like to do this, so we're gonna do this. It's more so that Potter understands the philosophy that their opponents have to the point where they know what kind of things they like to do, what kind of things they don't like to do, and it's can be completely like off of a completely new situation, right? It could be something that they've never done before, but Potter can think of because she's more so thinking about that team's philosophy of how they approach the game, as well as the things that they like to do. So that's part of it as well. Um, right now, EG is favored in the odds 1.42 to Furia's 2.7, which might even be underselling Furia to some extent, honestly. But overall, I think EG should win this. Um, Probably even like 2-0. But who knows? Furia beating 100 Thieves certainly throws a wrench into things, and they also looked pretty decent while they did it. So I guess time will tell. But I think without further ado, guys, I cannot speak anymore. My throat is killing me. I'm so fucking tired. I'm gonna upload this probably tomorrow, which would be Wednesday night. So hopefully it's enough time for you guys to enjoy the episode. I hope you liked this long ramble of an hour and 39-minute video. Dear God. Talking about EG. We are back. These episodes will not be this long. I promise you that. They're going to be much shorter and much better analysis, I can assure you, because this, I'm just so tired. Like, I'm dying out here. Um, but yeah, so thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoy the podcast. Again, if you would like for me to create a separate channel, please let me know, and I can think about doing that. And then as well, make sure to click on some of my Twitter and well, yeah, really my Twitter below, and follow it if you want to. I post a lot about EG. I do also post about some other stuff as well, but I do post about EG when I see things happen live. So if you want to see my live, not live reaction, but you want to see a very recent reaction from me about something that's happening with EG, that's Twitter's the best place for you to find that stuff from me. So hopefully you all enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. Again, my socials are down below. Thank you all for listening to this episode, watching this episode of the pod, and I will see you guys very, very soon, end of this week, most likely. So